If you want to understand why clean power is colliding with grid reality, this is the chart, the duck curve. On screen, that dipping line is net load, electricity demand left after we subtract solar. That deep midday belly is solar pushing net load down when the sun is strongest. Now look at the neck, late afternoon into sunset. Solar fades fast, right as homes and businesses start their evening surge. That swing can force the grid to find on the order of 10 to 17 gigawatts of flexible power in about 3 hours. Think a dozen plus big power plants worth of ramping, day after day. And it's not hypothetical. In 2024, California's grid operator, CAISO, reported about 3.4 million megawatt-hours of utility-scale wind and solar were curtailed, mostly solar. Curtailment doesn't mean the generators failed. It means available clean energy got turned down because the system couldn't use it in that moment, often due to oversupply or transmission congestion. So, can we actually solve this deadlock? Here's our roadmap: the cost reality, the storage gap, and the land use conflict. I'm joined today by a renewables advocate and a grid engineer to debate what a 100% renewable grid would really take. Let's start with the money.
Let's put numbers on the screen. Lazard's Levelized Cost of Energy Plus, June 2025, puts unsubsidized new-build utility-scale solar at roughly $38 to $78 per megawatt-hour. Onshore wind is in the same ballpark, and new gas combined cycle generally comes in higher on that chart. On a pure new-build energy cost basis, wind and solar are often the cheapest options.
And that chart is useful, but it's only one layer. LCOE is a project-level metric. It's the cost at the plant gate. It doesn't price the full system job, delivering power where and when people need it, with reserves, transmission, and balancing. So yes, the left side of the split screen looks cheap, but the right side is where reliability gets paid for.
Let's make that plain for everyone. Are you saying the sticker price on the solar farm can be misleading?
Misleading if you treat it like the whole bill. It's like bragging the engine is cheap when you still need the wheels, the frame, and the brakes. And you can see the system friction in real data. In 2024, CAISO curtailed about 3.4 million megawatt-hours of utility-scale wind and solar. That's energy that was available but couldn't be fully used, often because of congestion or oversupply at the wrong time.
Curtailment isn't renewables failed. It's the system is catching up. It usually means midday solar is abundant, but the grid needs more flexibility, storage, transmission, and better scheduling. And storage is getting cheaper fast. IRENA reports fully installed battery storage project costs fell about 93% from 2010 to 2024. That down arrow on the battery graphic is the integration story.
Batteries absolutely help, especially for the evening ramp. But there's another curve people miss. As solar penetration rises, solar's reliability contribution at peak shrinks. That's what ELCC is trying to capture. And in California-style lots of solar conditions, the capacity credit for incremental solar can fall into the single digits. So the big sun on the left doesn't translate into a big amount of dependable peak capacity on the right.
So the way to say it is, solar can be cheap energy, but the insurance for reliability can be expensive?
Exactly. If solar is only worth, say, single-digit % of nameplate for peak reliability, you still need other resources to cover the rest, whether that's storage, demand response, transmission, or firm generation. Those costs don't disappear just because the LCOE bar is low.
But that's also why the grid isn't solar alone. When you combine wind, solar, batteries, demand response, and more transmission, the portfolio smooths out the worst gaps. And in a lot of places, that mix, built deliberately, can still beat the cost of running or building peakers for the same level of service.
Let's pin that. The fight isn't the price of the panels. It's the price of the backup plan. Now let's take it from hours to days. What happens when the sun doesn't shine for a week?
The hard problem isn't a cloudy afternoon. It's the worst stretch of the year. Days when wind and sun both underperform. In the industry, we call it Dunkelflaute.
That sounds ominous. What does it actually mean?
It's German for something like dark low. Think a stalled high-pressure pattern. Overcast skies, weak wind, and renewables that just don't show up for days. And it's not hypothetical. In Germany, during Dunkelflaute windows on November 5th through 7th, 2024, wholesale prices briefly shot above €300 per megawatt hour, and hourly peaks went past €900.
To be fair, the lights stayed on. The system held.
They stayed on because dispatchable plants, imports, and reserves filled the gap. If you want a near 100% renewable grid, you still have to cover that gap without leaning on fossil gas.
Why can't we just build more batteries? We have gigawatts of them coming online.
Because batteries are sprinters. We need marathon runners. Look at that storage ladder on screen. Most grid batteries are built around a few hours. 4 hours is the workhorse. They shift solar from noon into the evening peak. They can't carry you through a week of slack wind.
That is changing fast. We aren't stuck with lithium-ion forever. Look at what's happening in Minnesota. Great River Energy and Form Energy broke ground in Cambridge on August 15, 2024, on a multi-day iron-air battery pilot. These systems are designed for up to about 100 hours. That gets you through roughly 4 days.
4 days is better than 4 hours. But Dunkelflaute stress cases can run longer. Week-plus events are the nightmare. For that, you start talking about seasonal storage.
Seasonal storage? You mean saving summer sunshine for winter?
Exactly. And for that scale, you usually leave battery territory and move into chemistry. You need hydrogen.
We are doing this in Utah right now. The ACES Delta project uses massive salt caverns to store hydrogen. It's basically a giant renewable gas tank.
It works, but there is a catch. The efficiency is brutal.
How bad is it?
Round-trip efficiency is typically around 40% for power to hydrogen to power. You put in 10 units of energy, and you only get about 4 back. You are throwing away more than half your energy just to store it. That means you have to overbuild your wind and solar farms massively to fill that tank.
But it's worth it for that last 10% of reliability. If the alternative is burning fossil fuels, a 40% efficient clean loop is a price we should pay.
Maybe, but that makes the energy incredibly expensive. It's not a technical impossibility. It's an economic wall.
So we have batteries for the hours and maybe hydrogen for the weeks. But the cost jumps significantly as we go longer. But even if we have the storage, can we actually move that power where it needs to go? That brings us to the wires. We've argued about costs and storage, but none of that matters if the power can't reach your house. On screen, that 3 gates graphic is the whole transition in one road: permitting, interconnection, and deliverability. Right now, the bottleneck isn't generating electricity, it's moving it.
And Gate 2 is basically welded shut. As of the end of 2024, interconnection queues held about 1,400 gigawatts of generation and nearly another 900 gigawatts of storage, just waiting to get studied and approved.
That logjam is exactly why FERC pushed Order 2023. It shifts the process from a slow, serial, first-come line to clustered studies with first-ready requirements, site control, bigger deposits, real readiness milestones. So speculative projects don't clog the queue forever. It's painful, but it makes room for the projects that can actually get built.
Cleaning up the paperwork still doesn't clear the physical path. To move new power at scale, you need new high-voltage corridors, and those rights-of-way can be on the order of 150 to 200 feet wide. Look at those towers on screen. Now imagine that corridor running for miles, crossing farms, neighborhoods, and habitats. That's the hard part.
So is the solution basically force the lines through, or is there a workaround?
Not always a new cut. We can squeeze more out of what we already have, reconductor existing lines with advanced wire, add sensors and controls, and in some cases, significantly increase capacity without expanding the footprint. And when we do build big, we can route smarter. Champlain Hudson Power Express is the poster child, a mostly buried, underwater HVDC line to New York City that's expected to be fully operational in spring 2026.
CHPE is impressive, but it also shows the problem. Even with a route that avoids a lot of overhead battles, it still took years to approve and build. And the grid doesn't care about press releases. It has to balance supply and demand second by second. If the wires aren't there when and where the power is produced, the cheapest solar panel in the world is still stranded.
That's the hard reality. We know how to generate cleaner power. But as that substation fills the screen, it's a reminder. We're still learning how to permit and build the path that delivers it. We've argued about costs, physics, and land use. Now the real question. Is the future actually 100% wind and solar, or a more complicated mix?
It's a portfolio, sure, but renewables are the main character. The IEA's Renewables 2025 Outlook expects renewables to meet over 90% of global electricity demand growth from 2025 to 2030. And in a lot of places, wind and solar are the cheapest way to add new power.
I'm with you on energy, on raw megawatt hours. But a grid also needs dependable megawatts every second through ramps and storms and surprises. That's where the rest of the portfolio earns its keep.
So look at the hybrid stack on screen. Big green base, cheap bulk energy. That blue middle layer, what is it?
Fast flexibility, and it's scaling right now. Take California. By November 2025, it reported about 16.9 gigawatts of battery storage available. That fleet is increasingly shifting midday solar into the evening peak, exactly what you want from that middle layer.
Batteries are great for hours, but they're not a free pass for multi-day weather events or a bad week. That top layer, firm capacity, is the insurance policy. And NERC has been warning that load growth and generator retirements can tighten reliability margins if replacements don't keep pace. Call it Dunkelflaute if you want. Those stretches when wind and solar both underperform. Whether it's hydro, nuclear, geothermal, clean fuels, long-duration storage, or demand response, you need something you can count on when the weather won't cooperate.
So the compromise is pretty clear, like this stack. We build lots of wind and solar for low-cost energy. We expand batteries and transmission to manage the daily swings. And we keep firm capacity for the hardest hours of the year.
I can live with that. As long as that firm layer gets cleaner over time, the economics and policy can keep pushing the system forward.
And I can live with that. As long as we respect the physics and the operators in rooms like the one on screen, and plan for reliability instead of assuming it.
This isn't just a fuel swap, it's a full system redesign. Thanks to both of you for the debate, and thanks for watching. Check the description for the sources. See you in the next one.